Hey folks, this is Kalani. Gearing up in World of Warcraft has never been easier for solo players, and I don't think solo players have ever been given this many options for not only how to gear up, but just play the game in general. In that regard, Dragonflight is doing a fantastic job, but some of these gear progression paths might not be immediately obvious, so you might be missing out on a lot of potential gear upgrades. So we're going to go through every gearing up path you have available to you as a solo player to help you get up to at least item level 385 and maybe up to 390 and above, with some extra tips about how you can go further if you really want to. There are a lot of options here with quite a bit of overlap, and if you dip your toes into each of the various progression paths you have available to you, you can actually gear up incredibly quickly. With that being said, I will make sure everything is time-stamped so you can skip around to the parts that you think are most relevant to you. Now before we jump in, be sure to hit up that like button and subscribe so you never miss another video. The first gearing option you have access to is going to be through professions. I want to talk about professions first for two main reasons. They're one of the fastest and easiest sources of great gear to kickstart your gearing up adventures, but then they also give you access to some of the best gear available for solo only players. You can immediately buy or craft item level 343 gear. Right now on my auction house, this stuff goes for a max of a few hundred gold each, so if you have gold to spare and you just dinged, or maybe it's a fresh alt or whatever, that can give you a very big jump to get into other forms of content or just make your overall progress a bit easier, so that's really cool. One step above that, you have things like training matrices. These are a little rarer, and I wouldn't necessarily rely on them for gearing, but understanding how they work is very important. You can find Titan Training Matrix level 4 from world quests rarely, so whenever you see one pop up, I would absolutely get that world quest done to grab it. You can then use the crafting order system to get an item crafted at item level 382 by using those training matrices, so they're definitely worth picking up to help fill in some of your lower item level slots. But where gear progression starts to shine through in the profession system is with the sparks of ingenuity. These only come from one place right now, the engine of innovation. You can find this over to the east side of Valdrakken, and if you haven't done much with it yet, you should have a quest either over there or a quest that tells you to go over there. Complete the little intro here and you should start receiving tiers trials. There are currently 4 trials available, so you can get up to 4 sparks right now, but additional sparks are being made available as the weeks go by. It's been 1 every 2 weeks up until this point, but that should speed up at some point in the near future. These sparks are important because they are required for every high-end crafting recipe in the game. These are some of the most powerful items you can create using professions, and you don't even have to have the profession yourself thanks to the work order system. If you get an item crafted at the highest rank, you can get item level 392 gear, and the only limiting factor is going to be these sparks. So with 4 sparks available, you can get up to 4 pieces of 392 crafted gear, and you can get to choose which slots these huge items are going to fill, so you can really tailor this gearing option to your needs. I know this has been a little confusing for a lot of players, so we'll go through it pretty quickly. To start with, you're going to need your sparks, so make sure you unlock the engine of innovation and complete any trial quests available. If you haven't made anything yet, you should have 4 sparks if you've done every trial. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to decide on an item to get crafted. You can get almost anything made for you, any armor piece, any weapon, necklaces, rings, and there are even trinkets that you can get crafted, though I would personally stay away from the trinkets as they are kind of bad right now. To decide on what we want, we're going to head on over to the crafting order clerks in Valdrakken. Just chat to the clerk and then we can start searching. You can get anything in here crafted, but I do have some suggestions. One of the more powerful crafted items available is the Elemental Lariat Necklace. The extra proc effect here is very useful, it's kind of like a free trinket, and having a neck piece with your best stats is always going to be very valuable. Another big one is your weapons. Weapons are some of the most important pieces of gear for almost everyone in terms of scaling or just pure stat budget, so getting a huge item in that slot will be great for your character overall. Bear in mind that two-handed weapons do cost 2 sparks to craft, so that will limit your potential slightly. And then I think the third most powerful option is probably a ring. The secondary stats on rings are always huge. You're going to need 2 good rings no matter what you do, so filling one of those requirements with a crafted item can save you a lot of headaches, and you get to pick your best secondary stats. It's worth noting that if you are interested in the tier set bonuses, either from dipping your toes into the raid, maybe doing LFR, or just waiting for the inspiration catalyst, I would avoid the slots where tier gear goes. So I would not craft a head, shoulder, chest, legs, or hands piece of gear if you want to go for tier later on, just something to consider. Another point worth making is that you cannot recover your sparks at all right now, so once you've decided on a craft and made it, you cannot get that spark back, so it is a big decision. I would definitely go for the elemental lariat necklace, your main hand weapon, and then a ring if you're struggling to decide. Those items will hold the most value over the longest period of time. So how do we actually get this stuff crafted? Well, let's take the elemental lariat as an example. The next step to getting this crafted is to narrow down what we need. So go to the crafting order clerk, search for the lariat, and click on the recipe. This is going to show us exactly what we need. So we need 1 spark of ingenuity, 30 primal chaos, 2 shimmering clasp, 1 illimited diamond, and 1 elemental harmony. I would also encourage you to buy a missive here to customize your secondary stats. You are crafting a big item, so be sure to get your best stats by using a missive. The spark we have, so that's no problem. The primal chaos can come from weekly quests, weekly boxes or caches, random dungeon runs, completing world quests, killing rares, and looting treasures, and a whole bunch of other sources. It's all over the game. If you're playing the game, you should have at least some primal chaos stocked up, and then the rest of this stuff I would just get from the auction house. When you have all of the materials, you need to find a crafter who can do what you want and create a personal order to that player. So I would keep an eye on the trade channel. Folks are usually spamming what they can do, so look out for a jewel crafter who can make a rank 5 lariat and who isn't charging an arm and a leg. If nobody's posting in trade, simply post in trade that you are looking for a jewel crafter who can craft the elemental lariat, preferably at rank 5, and hopefully you'll get a whisper. When you've got a player who can do what you want to go back to the crafting order. At the top right, change it to a personal order, and in the box below, put that player's character name. Slot in everything along with the commission and you're good to go. Be sure to also set a minimum crafting quality. I would always set a minimum of rank 4 if you bought lower quality items, or rank 5 if you bought all of the highest rank raw materials available. Do bear in mind that the rank that you receive is going to be dependent on the rank that you put in, so if you want that rank 5, you are most likely going to have to spend the money to get rank 3 materials for everything you need. You can also just create a public crafting order, just be aware that you have no control over the result, so your resulting item may have a lower rank and a lower item level, so it's usually worth finding a proper crafter to get the job done well. You can rinse and repeat this same method for as many sparks as you currently have. So right now you should be able to get up to 4 pieces of gear, which can be up to item level 392. That's pretty awesome considering you don't have to take part in any group content whatsoever for them, and as the weeks go by we'll get more and more sparks so you can get more and more high item level gear. Now you can go one step further here, and while it's not really solo player friendly, I do think it's important enough that you should know about it even if you decide you don't want to take advantage of it. All of this crafted gear can be upgraded by using a primal infusion and getting the item recrafted. The problem here is that to get a primal infusion, you need primal focus or concentrated primal focus. Primal focus drops from bosses in the raid on heroic mode, and you can also get it from running mythic plus dungeons above keystone level 10. The concentrated primal focus is even harder to get, that drops off of mythic raid bosses or from mythic plus keystones at level 15 or above. So again, it's not solo player friendly, those are high-end group activities, but I do want to bring it up because this crafted gear isn't just great for solo players in general, but it's also just really good gear that can scale into the very end game. If you end up running dungeons later on, or dipping your toes into the raid, this crafted gear doesn't suddenly become obsolete. Quite the opposite, in fact. You can upgrade it to keep pace with heroic raid gear and even mythic raid gear, and I would argue that mythic plus keystone dungeons are easier to get into without a dedicated group, so with the primal focus items dropping from dungeons as well, there is potential here to upgrade your crafted gear without going too crazy. Personally, I have used 2 of these primal infusions to upgrade my neck and my ring, and as soon as I have enough concentrated primal focus items from running keystones, I will be upgrading them further. This means that crafted gear isn't just a one and done thing, it's also a great investment in general. Maybe the potential upgrades here could entice you to shift gears a little and try out some dungeons too. Who knows? Either way, crafted gear is great. You should definitely use your sparks to get some crafted gear, even if you don't plan to upgrade it. So that's probably the most important part covered, but it's not going to cover everything, so what else can we do for some gear progression? Well, one of the easiest options you have are elemental storms. You can see these on the map very easily. 2 to 3 are active at any given time, and basically this is just a very easy currency grind. In an area with a storm, every mob will become empowered, and they will also drop some elemental overflow when killed. So the goal is easy: kill as many monsters as you can, gather up all that elemental overflow currency, and then you can buy some gear. I would recommend looking in the group finder for parties or raids that are farming specific storms. You don't necessarily have to, but it is going to be easier and faster in a group, and all you need to do is get your tags in and loot whatever you can. You can earn this elemental overflow currency incredibly quickly, so it's one of the fastest and most reliable methods of getting some good early gear that requires absolutely zero effort or any gear to begin with. When you're tired of farming, or when you have enough currency, bring it back to Mithressa in Valdrakken. Super easy to find because you probably have a quest called Storm Surge available in the same building. More on that in just a second. You can trade your elemental overflow in for item level 359 gear, so that's a nice upgrade from base crafted gear, early dungeon gear, or really anything you got while leveling. These sets also look really cool, and they even have some extra little set bonuses, so that's a nice bonus too. But the most important thing about this elemental storm gear is that it's upgradable. The other vendor in this building will upgrade the 359 item level stuff up to item level 385 gear. It looks the same, it has the same set bonuses, the only difference is the item level. To buy this gear you need the lower item level version as well as some storm sigils. Getting storm sigils is very easy. The quest here, Storm Surge, asks you to head into elemental storms and gather some elemental overflow. We're already doing that, so that's basically free. This is also a weekly quest from what I understand, so that's 1 sigil per week just for picking up this quest. And then while you're killing mobs in the elemental storms, they can also drop primal elemental cores. You can turn these back into the upgrade vendor for 2 storm sigils, and you can get 1 from each type of elemental storm. There are 4 elements: air, water, earth and fire, so you can get 4 of these per week by killing monsters in each type until you get your drop. It's only 1 type of elemental core each week, so turning all 4 of them in will net you 8 storm sigils for the week, and add that to the quest, we can get 9 sigils every single week. Each item will cost between 5 and 10 sigils to upgrade, so you can get 1 piece per week minimum, but that does mean this is going to be a bit of a longer progression path to kit yourself out in full item level 385 gear, but it's predictable, it's easy, and it's solo player friendly. Another gearing up pathway you have as a solo player is tied to World PvP. In the PvP building in Valdrakken, there is a vendor that will happily sell you item level 366 gear. All you need to do is gather up some bloody tokens. Each piece of gear will cost between 200 and 500 bloody tokens, with the weapons being a bit more expensive. Getting bloody tokens is very simple, but it does require war mode to be turned on, and there's going to be a spot of PvP involved. The largest source of bloody tokens are PvP world quests that reward bloody tokens. They can give you hundreds of tokens at a time, which is basically just a free piece of gear right there. Even if a world quest does not have bloody tokens as its active reward, all PvP world quests will reward you with about 50 bloody tokens upon completion. There are always 2 new PvP world quests per day, which means you can get a minimum of 100 bloody tokens from doing both world quests each day. Another major source of bloody tokens are the war mode supply caches that sometimes airdrop into random zones. The first one you loot each day will give you 200 tokens, and everyone after that will give you 50. So if you pay attention to when these are dropping and your faction controls the box quickly enough, this can be a crazy fast way of farming bloody tokens. And then you also get bloody tokens for just killing players with war mode on, but that's probably the hardest way to farm them if I'm being honest with you. Take your tokens back to the vendor and you can buy up some gear. This gear also has some very useful set bonuses, especially if you want to hop into PvP later on, so that might be something to take into consideration. Now, item level 366 might not seem too great here, but it is worth noting that because this is PvP gear, it will scale up to 408 in PvP content, so it's a great source of PvP gear to kickstart that kind of adventure if you want to hop into Battlegrounds or Arena later on. But in addition to that PvP scaling, this gear is also upgradable. The vendor right next to this one can upgrade your world PvP gear by using Trophies of Strife. There is only one place to get these trophies, the weekly quest right near these vendors. The quest is very simple: collect 100 sparks of life from a specific Dragon Isle zone. Now I know this is supposed to be all about world PvP and whatnot, but you don't actually have to do any PvP to get this quest done. I would argue you actually have to do more PvP to get the bloody tokens than you do to have to get the trophies of strife, which is a bit weird, but that works to our advantage. That means it's actually easier to upgrade this gear, and you don't have to spend any more time farming bloody tokens than you really need to. You do need to have war mode enabled, so PvP is always a possibility, but you can actually complete this spark quest all by yourself. The spark quest always has a given area, so this one is for the Waking Shore, which means you can only get sparks in the Waking Shore for this week. Here's where it gets easy. Any world quest in the designated area will reward you with 10 sparks, as long as you have war mode turned on. So if you go out and do all of the world quests before and after the half-week world quest reset, you should actually be able to complete this quest without having to do anything else. But just in case you do need some extra sparks, looting treasures in the zone will also give you 5 sparks. So things like expeditions packs or even disturbed dirt, they also give sparks. The PvP world quests give more sparks, elite world quests give you a few more sparks, and then of course you can also just kill players for some sparks as well. But personally, I just do the world quests, loot some treasures, and call it a day. This is also a weekly quest, which means you don't have to do it all at once. You can get 15 to 20 sparks per day and still complete it within the week very easily. Hand in the quest and you'll get some trophies of strife to upgrade your world PvP gear from 366 up to 385. Due to the weekly limit on trophies, this is going to be the same kind of slow progression path as the Elemental Storms, but with Elemental Storm weekly upgrades, Sparks of Life weekly upgrades, and your Sparks of Ingenuity crafted gear, you can get somewhere in the 390 ballpark very easily completely on your own. So that covers most of the big actual progression paths that you have access to that will let you slowly but surely work towards some higher item level gear, but there are a lot of things you can do to potentially get some big upgrades along the way. To start with, you should absolutely be killing the world boss on any character you want to try and gear up. The world bosses can be killed once per week and they rotate through a few different options, so just be sure to keep an eye out for the big purple world quest that has what sounds like the name of a dragon attached to it. Pop on over there, kill the world boss, and cross your fingers you get some loot. World bosses can drop item level 395 gear right now, so that's going to be a huge upgrade for anyone who isn't actively running the raid or higher end Mythic Plus and PvP content. Each boss can drop a variety of items, so I would encourage you to look at the dungeon journal to see if there's anything specific that you really want. In addition to that, I would also keep an eye on regular world quests as well. World quest rewards are going to be random in every sense of the word, random for where they are, random for what they're going to reward, but also random with what item level those rewards could be. The good news is that I've seen world quest rewards go up to item level 379 quite reliably, so they're great for gearing up while you wait on your weekly quests to progress through Elemental Storms or world PvP gear, or really just to fill in any other gaps, especially the trinkets. Most world quests are on a 3.5 day timer, so we get 2 sets of world quests each week, so be sure to pop on and take a look at the current world quests to see if anything is an upgrade. Remember that world quest rewards are going to scale, so the higher item level you get, the better these rewards are going to be, up until around the 379 mark. Now, a very useful suggestion I have for you here is that some world quests actually need unlocking. There aren't too many that I personally know of that are super worth it, but the most important one I think is worth going over is in the Anaran Plains. Just to the west of Maracai, you can find the Field of Ferocity. This is basically just another Ring of Blood style questline. There are several champions you have to defeat. They're all elites, so you might need a group to get them all done, or hopefully enough folks over here to help you work through them, but basically when you're done, this will unlock a world quest for the exact same kind of thing. Challenge one champion, kill them, and walk away with some shiny stuff. Very easy, very quick, and one of the best world quests I can recommend you definitely unlock on any character you want to gear up. And then of course the various faction events are still going to be worth doing if you still need gear. The Siege on Dragonbane Keep can be done repeatedly, but the first time you do it each week gives you an epic box of goodies with a higher chance at some loot. You can also farm Grand Hunts, but again the first one each week rewards an epic box with higher chances of upgrades, and then everyone knows about the Community Feast by now. All of these events scale with your item level, so the better item level you get, the better gear they're going to reward. In addition to the weekly events, there are also the weekly quests over at the Obsidian Citadel. After picking either Rathian or Sibelian for the week, all of the weekly quests in this area have a chance to reward you with gear. That gear can scale pretty high too. I've seen up to item level 385 from these quests, so again, I wouldn't necessarily use them as your primary means of gearing up. They're not really that reliable, but they might help you fill in a few gaps or replace your lower item level gear as you work on more reliable sources of gear. They do also sometimes reward Primal Chaos, so if you're struggling with that, this is another great source. Now, something along the same vein that you've probably heard of but maybe thought obsolete at this point is rare farming. There are quite a few rares in the Obsidian Citadel area, the Brackenhide Hollow area, and a few other dotted around that can drop significantly better gear when compared to other rare monsters. These so-called super rares can drop gear at the high 370s and even into the 380s. I've heard of folks getting as high as item level 389, which is kinda crazy considering it's just a rare monster. So if you have nothing better to do, you can camp these rares for another chance at some gear upgrades, or if you're just in the area for whatever reason and a rare pops up, be sure to grab a tag. You never know when you might get lucky and replace those pesky rings or trinkets. I use a week aura to track which rares I killed for the day, so I'll leave a link to that in the description below. You will need the week auras add-on to get that to work, just bear that in mind. Most of these extra sources are just that, extra sources of potential upgrades. I wouldn't focus on them specifically to gear up. I would start with Profession gear, Elemental Storm gear, or World PvP gear, or a mix of everything. If you spend your weekly Elemental Storm upgrades on some pieces of gear, and then your weekly PvP upgrades on different gear, and then use your Sparks of Ingenuity to craft different items again, you can essentially use 3 systems all at once to progress way faster than just relying on one, and then use the other stuff to fill in the gaps. You'll be drowning in gear in no time. That's all for the more casual side of solo play, but Dragonflight does give you a few options if you want to jump into some harder content that still doesn't require you to actually form any groups. To start with, the highly anticipated solo queue rated PvP. This is a little bit more involved, but it will open up your potential gearing options quite considerably. The big restriction here is that you do need to have item level 408 to participate, but that's your PvP item level, not your PvE item level. That's very important because PvP gear scales very high in PvP content. The World PvP gear from earlier is a great example. The item level 366 stuff scales up to 411 in PvP, so if you have a full set of that World PvP gear, you're almost all the way there. The upgraded versions scale up to 421 in PvP, so that's a nice big bump, and then to fill in any gaps, you're looking at honor gear. You can queue into random battlegrounds, epic battlegrounds, arena skirmish, or even a brawl to earn honor very quickly. The bog standard honor gear costs between 500ish and 900ish honor per piece of gear, with weapons being way more expensive. All of the honor gear scales up to item level 411 in PvP combat, so between that and the world PvP stuff, you should be able to get 408 PvP item level pretty easily. Rated solo queue is very interesting because it's all hop in, hop out content. You don't have to form a group and you literally can only go in solo, which means that everyone else is also on an even playing field. There are no groups involved at all. You play 6 rounds of 3v3 with teams mixing and matching every round. It's also first blood rules, so the first team to score a kill wins that round and then you move on. It's pretty fast paced and it's actually a lot of fun, but the value here lies in the gearing avenues that it opens up. Because this is rated PvP content, you'll gain and lose rating based upon your performance, but you'll also be earning the conquest currency. This lets you buy even higher item level gear from the PvP vendors. It starts at item level 382, and if you can increase your rating by winning games, you can upgrade that gear using honor. So the better you do, the higher item level you can acquire, and I think at the highest upgrades, this gear is item level 408, so that's pretty big for zero group content. But it actually goes even further than that, because solo queue is rated PvP content. It also contributes towards your weekly vault. So earning honor from solo queue lets you get up to 3 extra choices in your weekly vault, and the item level will depend on your rating. The higher the rating you go, the better the rewards are going to be. But ultimately, this just gives you yet another chance at some big upgrades every week. If you really enjoy solo queue and you get some good rating, these rewards can end up being huge, especially if you don't take take part in any other content that contributes towards a weekly vault reward. So if you're not killing any raid bosses and you don't even do one Mythic Plus dungeon a week, you're not getting anything in the weekly vaults. If you can get that from the solo queue, that's one piece of extra gear per week, which could be another big upgrade. And then if you want to hop into some group content or just test it out without actually having to worry about the whole group finding part, there's always LFR. The looking for raid difficulty lets you queue into it without any strings attached, so you don't have to do any actual group finding, you just have to wait in the queue. LFR gives you a look at how raiding kinda works for the Vault of the Incarnates raid. The fights are significantly easier in LFR, and the gear rewards aren't quite as good, but if you're interested in dipping your toes into group content, LFR is a good first step. While the rewards are lower than the other raid difficulties, they're still probably pretty good for most solo content players. LFR gear starts at item level 376 from the earlier bosses and scales up to 385 from the later bosses, so that's still on par with some of the higher gear you can actively work towards. The raid also has some very powerful items like unique trinkets, rings, and of course tier set bonuses. These set bonuses are typically quite powerful, so they're always going to be worth it if you want to maximize your character's potential power level. So you can hop into LFR, and if you're lucky, you might walk away with some very shiny loot. LFR can also help you fill up your weekly vault for some extra rewards, so that's an extra bonus too. It's worth noting that any weekly reward in the vault can be tier gear too, even if it's from dungeons or PvP, so if tier gear is something you really want, getting some rewards via solo curated or LFR can help you towards that goal as well. And then the last source of gear on this list is going to be a bit of a long grind depending on how you approach the game, but there are actually quite a few rewards you can seek out that come from reputation farming, and some of them are quite good when compared to other sources of gear for solo players. To start with, we have the Rathian and Sibelian rep grind. When you reach the friend rank, you can buy a 389 neck piece, and when you reach the true friend rank, you can buy a 398 cloak. So there's some high item level rewards on offer if you want to farm keys all day. There's also the Cobalt Assembly rep grind. If you get the assembly power up too high, you can buy a 389 ring with a special effect, so that's a good one to pick up. And then the four major factions also have gear rewards tied to their renowned track. You can find them at around about 12 to 16 for the first one, and then above 18 for the second one. The first round of gear rewards is item level 376, and then the second round, the higher tier, is item level 389. So you can get some good rewards from rep farming if that's something you're interested in. That's pretty much everything for now, but we do have some more options coming in patch 10.0.5. The patch releases on January 24th, so it's right around the corner, and there's going to be a new event over in the Primalist Future area that will drop a new currency. That currency, along with the Elemental Overflow from earlier in the video, can be used to buy item level 385 rings, necks, and a trinket, so the gear slots are going to be easier to fill when the patch rolls around. In addition to that, the Inspiration Catalyst will finally open up in the same week on January 24th. That's going to give us a lot of extra options for how to obtain tier gear in Season 1 of Dragonflight. We know that there will be a weekly quest tied to this to generate charges that you will need to actually use the catalyst, so there's still some work involved, but the real key here is you can nab those set bonuses for yourself without delving too deep into the raid, which also means you should be able to get tier sets from solo gearing methods as well. We don't have any confirmation what will or will not work in the catalyst just yet, but I think the higher item level Elemental Storm gear, the item level 385 stuff, I think that should be available from the catalyst at the very least. That makes the most sense to me. If you do end up going into the solo queue PvP route, the rated gear from that should also be catalyst ready, so even if this doesn't really give you any extra options for getting gear, you should still be able to start working on your tier sets as a solo player when the catalyst becomes available, so save the date. January 24th, the floodgates open for tier set bonuses for everyone and give solo players even more content to enjoy. So, all in all, you have a few very good sources of gear progression, but they can take a little while, so you want to supplement that gear with some other sources at the same time. With everything combined together, you have so many options for chasing gear upgrades, even as a solo player. But if you just want to wait for the weeks to roll by, you can get up to item level 385 just by using the Elemental Storms gearing path or the World PvP gearing path. If you want to jump into harder solo content, the solo PvP rated option really really opens things up, but that's entirely up to you. But that is all of the ways you can gear up as a solo player with zero interaction with other players, or at the very least zero effort involved when it comes to group activities. So, which gearing paths are you going to work through, and how interested are you in group activities like raiding and Mythic Plus dungeons this time around? Has anything in Dragonflight changed your opinion of that content, or you are still just going to focus on solo content only? Leave all your thoughts in the comment section below. A big thank you to all of our supporters over on Patreon and all of our members here on YouTube. You can see the names floating by on screen. If you'd like to add your name to the end of every video with a special shout out at the start of the next video, you can find links in the description over to Patreon or click the join button just below this video. If you want to see more videos like this, make sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell so you never miss another video. Thanks for watching folks, good luck and have fun, and as always I will see you next time.